Good afternoon. It is Sunday, March 16th. I'm Yumna Naufal, and these are today's headlines. Ukraine votes to either join Moscow or remain independent in a referendum condemned by West as illegal. Syrian forces backed by Hezbollah fighters take control of Yabrud after killing out rebels holed up in the town. And Syrian warplanes carried out airstrikes on the border town of Arsel as media reports that gunmen from Yabrud are fleeing to the area. People in Crimea take to the polls for a referendum on breaking away from Ukraine to join Russia. Ukraine's new government and most of the international community, except for Russia, have said they will not recognize a result expected to be overwhelmingly in favor of immediate secession. Some 1.5 million people are called to vote on the Black Sea Peninsula, which is mostly inhabited by ethnic Russians and has been seized by Russian forces over the past month. Ukraine's interim president, Alexander Turchinov, called on Crimeans to boycott the ballot, accusing Russia of engineering it as part of an invasion plan. Voters can choose to become part of Russia or retain more autonomy but stay in the Ukraine. A vote for the status quo is not an option. Meanwhile, at the United Nations, Russia vetoed resolution declaring the referendum on the future of Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula as illegal, and close ally China abstained in a show of Moscow's isolation. Supporters of the U.S.-sponsored resolution knew that Russia would use its veto, but they put the resolution to a vote on Saturday morning to show the strength of opposition to Moscow's takeover of Crimea in the UN Security Council. The council meeting was the 7th on Ukraine in just over 2 weeks, but the UN's most powerful body has still been unable to take any action because of Russia's veto power.
Crimea is part of Ukraine today. It will be part of Ukraine tomorrow. It will be part of Ukraine next week. It will be part of Ukraine unless and until its status is changed in accordance with Ukrainian and international law. Russia prevented adoption of a resolution today, but it cannot change the aspirations and destiny of the Ukrainian people, and it cannot deny the truth displayed today that there is overwhelming international opposition to its dangerous actions.
And we continue to discuss the situation further. On Skype with us live from Baku is senior editor Claude Salhani. Claude, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, yes.
Now, while the West has been pretty powerless to stop annexation, Russia faces a painful round of sanctions against top officials that Washington and EU nations are set to unveil tomorrow, and it could be ejected from the group of leading 8 world powers. What I want to know is, are we witnessing the international community getting ready to sever ties with Russia?
Well, sever ties is a very big word, I think. I don't think they will sever ties. I think they will probably try and twist Russia's arm, impose sanctions, do all sorts of things. But as far as severing ties, diplomatic relations with Russia, I don't see that happening at all.
Ukraine's government said that Crimea cannot survive on its own since it depends on electricity, energy, and water supplies from the mainland. So in case the vote does not go through, what will we get from more autonomous Crimea?
Well, they could do all that you just said. They could cut off water, electricity supplies, gasoline, all that, but then they will start receiving it from Russia. If Russia intends to support Crimea, they're going to go all the way and support it. That means providing for the needs of the people there. Most of them are, as you said earlier, ethnic Russians, and so they have to take care of them. They're not going to just cut them off and let them starve and freeze to death.
What about the Ukrainian personnel and the Ukrainian army that's there right now in Crimea?
Well,
what happens to them?
There are 74 army bases, Ukrainian army bases in Crimea, of which 70 are surrounded by Russian troops. Only 4 are not, and those are 4 that are mostly related to the air traffic controllers that the Russians need in order to fly their planes. But you've got 70 military camps surrounded by Russian troops at this moment.
You know, we've seen the United States and Russia at odds over not only Ukraine now, also Syria, which has entered its 4th year of what they're calling a civil war just yesterday. As of this morning, the town of Yabrud, which sits near a key rebel supply line stretching into Lebanon, well, has fallen into the Syrian army hands and is dealing a major blow to the rebels there. Why do you think Yabrud is a strategic city?
Well, because it's close to the Lebanese border, and Lebanon plays an important role in the supply route to the rebels. They have, I don't want to say rear bases, but they have rear points of support amongst villages and towns in Lebanon that for them is very important. So this is a major blow to the resistance, to the opposition.
It is a major blow to the opposition, but what does it say about the fighting in Syria now entering its 4th year? I mean, where is it going?
Well, I don't think it's going anywhere decisive anytime soon. I think it's just we're going to see more back and forth, victories for the opposition, victories for the government. Right now, the government seems to be having the upper hand. They have enough supplies, they have enough men. They're following a certain tactic which seems to be working. They're putting pressure where they need to put it, where there are hot points. They're putting their own military and then relying on Hezbollah and other allies from Iraq and Iran to back them up in other places where there's milder resistance. They're putting those militia forces. Where there's need for heavy artillery and aviation, they're putting their own troops. So they're following a certain military tactic that seems to be working for the moment.
You know, you mentioned Hezbollah and entering also its 4th year. What does this mean for an already fragile Lebanon?
Well, I think Hezbollah might have gotten themselves into something that they may eventually have second thoughts about, but I don't know what they can do about it. I think they're there to stay. It's going to weaken them. They're taking losses. They're taking casualties. We don't know exactly how many, they won't say, but they are taking casualties. There are reports of numbers of Hezbollah fighters killed every week. It's going to affect the movement in Beirut, in Lebanon, and it's going to affect the movement overall. So I think they may have gotten in over their heads.
Right, well, we'll just have to wait and see as time goes on. Thank you for being with us today. That was Mr. Claude Salhani, live from Baku, Azerbaijan, the Trend News Agency senior editor. As we said earlier, on to Syria, where the army, backed by fighters from Hezbollah, have seized control of the rebel stronghold of Yabrud. This is according to state media that says that dealing the opposition a heavy symbolic and strategic blow was taking over Yabrud. Nami Abdulrahman, the director of the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, said that government troops were in control of most of the town, but fighting is still ongoing. The fall of Yabrud comes after months of Syrian army operation in the strategic Kalamoun region, north of Damascus, the capital, where the town is situated. In addition to its symbolic importance, the town is a key strategic prize because of its proximity to the highway and the Lebanese border, across which rebels have smuggled fighters and weapons. The capture of the town and continuing army operations in the surrounding area will sever important supply lines for the rebels as they face several army advances on different fronts. The army's capture of Yabrud comes a day into the 4th year of Syria's conflict, which began in March of 2011. And spilling into Lebanon, Syrian warplanes carried out 3 airstrikes on the outskirts of the eastern border town of Arsail. As media reports say, the gunmen from the rebel bastion of Yabrud are fleeing to the area after the Syrian army seized full control of the town. What you are seeing on our screens right now are the roads blocked. The Syrian airstrike targeted the outskirts of Arsail's mountainous regions. And opposition sources said civilians and activists in the town have fled overnight into Lebanon. And Syrian state television said the army was targeting what it claims is a group of terrorists fleeing Yabrud between the village of Fleita in Syria and the town of Arsail. LBC News reported that more than 1,000 gunmen headed to the outskirts of the Bekaa town as the Lebanese army took extra measures to prevent armed men from entering the area. And as you can see on our screens, it closed the Arsail-Labwe road. The town seizure is also likely to place new pressure on Arsail, which is hosting tens of thousands of refugees. Coming up next, Chicago starts celebrating St. Patrick's Day, which falls on March 17th. We've got the pictures right after the break. Welcome back to Future TV News. The Lebanese army lost one of its own over the weekend as deadly clashes between pro and anti-Assad fighters in the northern city of Tripoli raged unabated overnight. The loss of the soldier raised the death toll to 12 now since clashes erupted late on Thursday between fighters in the rival neighborhoods of Bibi Tabene and Jabal al-Muhsin. In a statement released on Saturday, the army said that at around 9:30 p.m., unidentified gunmen fired a rocket-propelled grenade at a military transport in Malula, leading to the death of a soldier. Hours earlier, Mohammed Haile, a man accused of targeting the army back in February, was shot and killed in the city's vegetable market. Haile was accused of firing an RPG at the military in the last round of clashes between fighters in the rival neighborhoods. And on to the cabinet, contacts are ongoing to convince the Kataib party to withhold its threat to resign from Premier Tamam Salam's government over the new cabinet's policy statement, as it is impeding the agreement between political rivals. According to An-Nahar newspaper, the cabinet will receive a total of 110 lawmakers out of 128, and it will grant Salam's government the vote of confidence despite the Lebanese Forces parliamentary bloc's decision to withhold it and the forced absence of the head of Future Movement MP Saad Hariri and his bloc's lawmaker MP Aqab Sa'ar from the parliamentary session. The Kataib party warned following a grueling late meeting on Saturday that its ministers in Prime Minister Salam's government will resign before the parliamentary vote of confidence if the policy statement was not amended. In regional news, Israel is to allow the resumption of diesel deliveries into Gaza a day after the territory's sole power plant stopped working due to a lack of fuel. The announcement comes after the Defense Ministry had shut down the Kerem Shalom goods crossing into southern Gaza on Thursday following a cross-border fire. The latest violence started after Israel killed 3 men associated with the Islamic Jihad armed group. Palestinian fighters then fired scores of rockets over the border, although no one was injured. Israel hit back with airstrikes, which also caused no injuries, and officials ordered the closure of the terminal, halting all deliveries, including fuel. Still making headlines around the world, Malaysia says that police searched the homes of the pilots of the missing jet and examined a home flight simulator after revelations that the flight was deliberately diverted triggered a full-scale criminal probe. As a multi-nation operation begins, a new push to locate the vanished Boeing 777 somewhere within a vast arc of land and ocean, criminal investigators are seeking other clues to the fate of the Malaysia Airlines plane. Transport Ministry said police searched the pilots' homes on Saturday and are examining the captain's home flight simulator, but cautioned the public not to jump to conclusions. The police action followed Saturday's startling revelations that the plane's communication system had been manually switched off before the jet veered westward and flew on for hours. Briefing the press, Prime Minister Najib Razak declined to use the word hijack, but said the new data suggested deliberate action by someone on board. Sarah Weeks is the sister of a missing Malaysian Airlines passenger. His name is Paul Weeks, and she says she has raised hopes that her brother is still alive after hearing news that the plane was deliberately flown off course. Weeks said the new developments are starting to piece the puzzle.
In a way, it does raise your hopes because you think the potential is there that my brother is still alive. But then I also find that very scary as well, because if someone has deliberately taken this plane, then they've taken it for a reason, and I think we know that oftentimes that's not good. I think we sort of thought that there were things that didn't quite add up. This certainly makes a lot more sense to us. It's, you know, we've said all along, how do you just lose a plane? And it seems they haven't, and I think the only issue for this for us, which is quite distressing, is that they've known this information for days now, and it's only just come out as a confirmed thing, you know, since yesterday. And we think, well, you know, perhaps if they'd been doing something about it days ago, maybe the potential may have been there to bring people home alive, or, you know, at least find out what had happened, and certainly stop a lot of the distress for the families.
Parade celebrations took place on Saturday in Chicago, the United States, ahead of St. Patrick's Day, which is tomorrow, as thousands gathered in downtown city area to kick off the proceedings. Thousands of local residents and tourists gathered on the Columbus Drive in downtown Chicago to begin celebrations during the weekend, and they donned in celebratory green outfits as a mark of respect to the apostle and patron saint of Ireland, St. Patrick, who lived in the 5th century. Crowds witnessed a Chicago River section turned into a sea of green as hundreds and hundreds took to the streets. People were seen riding boats back and forth across the river section in marking the event. This included a rowing team leading cheers and applause. And all this green scenery was then followed by a parade procession filled with celebratory signboards and poster boards to display of the Irish national flags in plethora numbers, also with themed floats carrying proceedings. On that note, we end our bulletin for today. Let me remind you of our top stories. Ukraine votes to either join Moscow or stay independent in a referendum condemned by the West as illegal. Syrian forces backed by Hezbollah fighters take control of the town of Yabrud after clearing out rebels holed up there. And Syrian warplanes carry out airstrikes on the border town of Azzel in Lebanon as media reports that gunmen from Yabrud are fleeing here. Those wrap up your week headlines live on Future Television in Beirut. I'm Yumna Nofal, wishing you a great week ahead.